It's just different.
Glass is the greatest. That's where real expansion of your mind and talents can be found. Turn on. Tune out of the rat race and its square problems. And tune in on real self-knowledge and creative power.
Welcome back to the channel. I am your host, Jedi. And today, we're going to be talking about Deadpool and Wolverine. Probably one of the most anticipated movies ever. This film had the potential to be one of the greatest comic book movies of all time. Especially when you bring back Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, the greatest superhero casting of all time, besides Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man. But does this movie live up to the hype? Will this movie be remembered in 10 years? And where does this film rank amongst all the other Deadpool movies? I think the most memorable thing about this movie are the cameos. And this might be a little controversial, but to be honest, I think this movie is just mid at best. It's not the worst thing that I've ever seen, but it's also not the greatest thing I've ever seen either. And I'm kind of sad to say this, but I don't think this movie is the greatest anything. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. This movie is definitely entertaining, and some parts are really fun, but there's nothing in this movie that adds on to either of these characters, Deadpool or Wolverine, or any of the cameos. This isn't the best version of Deadpool, and this isn't the best version of Wolverine. It's almost like these versions are just caricatures of themselves from previous movies. I mean, they're saying all the taglines, all the quotes, they're acting all types of crazy, which kind of made this movie not feel organic. It kind of felt like they were just checking boxes of how they think these characters would act in a situation like this. Which brings me to the story. Deadpool's universe is going to be destroyed because it's lost its anchor being. And I bet you're wondering, what is an anchor being? Well, an anchor being is somebody so important to their universe, their existence is holding it together. And if they die in some unexpectedly tragic way, then their whole universe comes crashing down, which is probably one of the dumbest reasons that you could come up with for a whole entire universe being destroyed. Do you remember the TVA from the Loki TV series? Well, they tell Deadpool that his whole universe is going to be destroyed because it's lost its anchor being. And the anchor being to this universe is, guess who? Logan, the Wolverine, the one from the Logan movie that died in the end, and since he died, his whole universe dies too? Yeah, that Fox universe that you remember so fondly? Well, it's going bye-bye. But Deadpool is too important to this completely different universe, which is the MCU, so they decided to keep him alive, which makes no sense, especially if this universe already has their own versions of Deadpool. And I'm not so sure about how important this one can be, or is. And this is all explained to Deadpool by Mr. Paradox, sector director, head honcho in controlling the foreseeing of the destruction of Deadpool's universe in due time. And I guess Deadpool is stupid now, so all he thinks he has to do is replace his Wolverine with another Wolverine from a different universe, and his universe will be saved. So he hits the TVA guy, he steals the time traveling device, and he goes on a search for a new Wolverine to replace his from a different universe. Like that's gonna work. I understand it's supposed to be new to us, but we have to assume these guys that control the whole universe, whole timeline, have already tried everything before they consider destroying a whole universe. So him just stealing that and taking off is kind of just, oh, it's fun, but it's kind of stupid, kind of dumb. The things that make this movie good are exactly the same things that make this movie bad. The cameos are probably the best thing in this movie, and the cameos are probably also the worst thing in this movie. We get to see Deadpool travel to these alternate realities and interact with these different Wolverines briefly. And I do mean briefly. About 20 seconds each. Just a little teaser, a piss break. They try to give you so much that you're really seeing nothing at all. And that says a lot because we get to see 5 different Wolverines, each one from a different timeline. And I'll give them credit for this. Each timeline is represented by a comic book cover, which looks very cool in live action. But does it mean anything to the story? Not really, because they give you a montage to the whole damn thing. You get to see this Wolverine, you get to see that Wolverine, you get to see comic book height accurate Wolverine, and you also get to see the Cavalrine, which is Henry Cavill as a version of Wolverine. And yes, all of this looks very cool, but again, none of this means anything to the story. He doesn't really get a chance to communicate with any of them. He either walks away and says he's not the right one, or the alternate version of Wolverine tries to kill him. No explanation, no quick conversation. You get nothing. If you're gonna have Deadpool interact with different Wolverines, you could at least made it like Spider-Man No Way Home, meaningful to the story. Each character you bring in has a purpose to the plot, not just for little quick one-off jokes. For example, if Johnny Storm is your favorite character, you might not like this movie. Because they make him look like a buffoon, a complete idiot. Like, I know he wasn't the smartest guy, but this movie completely dogs him out. Like he wasn't a part of the Fantastic Four or something. And that's a team you can't disrespect. But let me get back to this movie. They're still in montage mode, just going from scene to scene until he finds the right one. Which is fine, but to me it just seems like a gimmick and kinda lame. I'd rather him interact with them, share a little backstory, give us some insight into whether this universe has ever encountered any other versions of Deadpool before. Or is this the first time? I don't know. They never explain. But then we get to the last Wolverine, and he's just hanging out in the bar, having a drink. And Deadpool claims this one is the correct one. And his reason why is just because he hasn't tried to kill him yet. Which still doesn't explain why this Logan is the correct one. Because I guarantee you if he kept traveling, he would meet more Wolverines that wouldn't try to kill him. So that's not even a good explanation on why this is the correct one. But it doesn't matter because he takes him back to Mr. Paradox anyways. And that's when you finally get the big reveal. Logan in his yellow costume. And we're supposed to believe he was just wearing that underneath his clothing. Body armor, shoulder pads, and he's just chilling in his costume all day like Superman. Okay, whatever. And I know that might seem like a nitpick, but that's just another thing that they don't explain in this movie. And soon as he gets back, he's immediately told by Paradox that this isn't the right Wolverine. This is actually the worst Wolverine. Why? Because this Wolverine let his people die. Are they at least going to show us in a visual flashback? No. Is that all we're going to get? Is a throwaway line about it? Yes. And honestly, I would accept that reason. But there's nothing in this Wolverine's actions that prove to me on why he's the worst one. Because after watching this movie, he actually seems like the best Wolverine. He's got all the moves. He's saying all the F-bombs. He's smoking. He's drinking. And I'm not even saying he's the best Wolverine like he's the best Wolverine. But in all attributes, he's up to par with every Wolverine that we've seen thus far. But we're supposed to believe that this is the worst Wolverine. And he's really not. Later in the movie, Deadpool even tells you that he's the best one. But let me get back to this movie. Deadpool tries to get into a confrontation again, but Paradox is ready this time, and they get zapped into the void, a Mad Max type world that has everything you need and anything you want. So anything can be there at any time, at any moment. Yeah. Because everything's there. If you watch Loki, season 1 and 2, then you understand anything can be there. Everything got pruned, right? I think that's the right term. Pruned and it gets zapped into the void. Yeah, it all gets mixed up. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but that's what happened. We got real superhero cameos, and then we got fake superhero cameos. And what I mean by fake is they couldn't have the real actors come back and reprise their roles, so they had different actors come back and play the same characters that were in previous movies that came out. Which is fine, but it's more that gimmick thing, like, let's get everybody in here, as much people in here as we can. Let's hurry up and do it. Let's get everybody in here. As many people as possible as we can. Let's get them all in here. And are all these characters going to mean anything to the story? No. I can't remember for sure, but I think the only ones that talk out of the villain cameos is Pyro and Juggernaut. Or at least they're the only ones that have memorable lines to me. But Paradox isn't the only bad guy. We also get a secondary villain in this movie, which is Charles Xavier's twin sister, Cassandra Nova. And the actress does fine, but the character's kind of dumb because she's overpowered and there's really no way to defeat her. She actually ends up defeating herself. And to be honest, she's not that memorable. Not because of the actress, but because what they've done with the character. But the cool thing about this place is they can bring in all these characters from previous movies that we've seen and love. Characters like X-23, Blade, Gambit, Elektra. So it's a plus, but then it becomes a negative. Because that's what I mean by the cameos are the best thing and they're the worst thing in this movie. Because you bring these characters in, but none of them really interact with each other. Like Blade, for instance. He doesn't even talk to Wolverine. They look at each other and they give each other like a head acknowledgement, but they don't say there's any backstory. They don't say they have any history in the Midnight Suns. So it's just a complete waste of a character if you ask me. Even Gambit, when they bring him in, all he does is complain about Wolverine drinking all his liquor. And probably the worst mistake is bringing X-23 in, because when she talks to Wolverine, it means nothing because they don't know each other. These are both different versions from different universes, so the conversation they had means nothing to them. So that definitely makes two things true at once. They're the best thing, and they're the worst thing. I like seeing them, but they didn't do anything with them after that. Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds carried this movie to the finish line, and they both played the roles great. But if you ask me which version of the live-action Wolverine is the best, I would probably point towards Days of Future Past or the Logan movie. And then if you ask me about Deadpool, I would say Deadpool 1 and 2 is better than this. I don't think this movie will be remembered in 10 years. Maybe 10 months, but not 10 years. But that's all I got for Deadpool and Wolverine. If you liked the video and you like what you heard, please like and subscribe, and I will see you next time with more movie news reviews.
Square problems, and tune in on real self-knowledge and creative power.